One by one, the bright yellow buses began piling up in front of the school in a line, each one opening their doors one after another. I watched from the top of the steps in front of the school, Josh at my side. The rest of the students were all crowding around the buses, waiting to be directed by the teachers.
Can you believe we're visiting a legit science lab?
Josh asked excitedly. I nodded in agreement. It should be good. James told me there's some new project he's working on that he's gonna unveil while we're there.
Hopefully, it's something exciting. Like a spider monkey. Or a lizard bat. Maybe he's finally cracked code on genetically engineered cat girls.
He exclaimed. I gave him a WTF look and he shrugged.
What? Like you wouldn't want a genetically engineered neko waifu.
I wouldn't say no to one, I admitted, but I doubt it's anything like that. Last night during dinner, he said it's a new generation of technology that could change the world.
Telepathy. Nanobots? Invisible missiles. Turreted lawnmowers?
He asked. I gave him that look once again and asked, how again did you get into this school?
Pure luck, Ben.
He said with a grin as he watched the teachers begin directing students. Sophia then came from behind, slapping us both on the back of the head.
Move up, slowpokes, if you want to get seats together.
The two of us got up, following her down the steps to the bus. It was a bright morning, and I could only wonder what the rest of the day would bring us. About 20 minutes later, we found ourselves standing in the lobby of a pristine white research laboratory, amazed at even the simplest of things. 2 clear glass tubes were sitting in the lobby, a bright blue liquid churning through them. I didn't know whether it was just for show or if it was actually connected to something.
What do you think it is?
Josh asked as he stared into it. Alien juice? I answered, unsure of the right answer.
Maybe it's just grape juice.
Our classmate Amanda suggested. Josh shook his head.
Too bright.
Another classmate approached us from behind, holding up a phone to his face with the tube behind him.
People of New York, what is up? Chan, back with another stream, this time inside of the top secret facility that just opened in Queens. I'm here to give you a top secret look on the inner workings of this mysterious lab and the aliens we may find inside.
A woman then approached the boy, glaring at him.
Recording is prohibited inside this facility. Either put it away or I'll have to confiscate it.
The boy sighed, stuffing his phone into his pocket. His name was Chandler, and he was a mix between both chill and cringy. He rarely worried about much due to his easy school schedule and lack of extracurricular activities. The most he did was wake up, go to school, and then either go home or hang out with us, which he did from time to time. The other girl was Amanda, one of the fastest girls in our school. She was a part of the track team and the winner of several of our school's trophies. She also did softball from time to time, but didn't have the time to join that team as well. Normally, Josh and I wouldn't be friends with a sporty girl like her, but she was Sophia's best friend, and now she was ours.
According to this label,
Sophia commented as she read a small plaque on the foot of the tube.
this is some sort of power source. Xenoplasma, it says.
It probably powers the facility if that's true, I said as I examined the label as well.
Guys,
Amanda said, poking Josh and I to get our attention as the doors behind us opened. James walked through the white doors, smiling brightly as he addressed us in his stainless white lab coat. He looked over the small crowd before speaking.
Welcome everyone to Elysia Labs. Here we're working on a new generation of technology that can change how the world is as we know it. For your tour today, each class will be split into 3 groups and given to a tour guide to head to a different section of the building. And by the end of the day, every group will have gotten a chance to see the entire facility. After the tour, we'll have lunch and meet in the auditorium, where I will unveil our newest project.
James told us all.
Now, turn to your teachers who will split you into groups.
One by one, we were all sorted into groups. Luckily, Josh and I were both put into the same group. Sophia, however, was put into another one. I felt a bit bummed, but happy I at least had Josh with me.
I'll see you two at lunch. Try not to blow the place up.
Sophia said as her group left the lobby. I smiled and stared at her until she left, the back of her head disappearing from the small glass window on the door. Josh scoffed and turned around.
Jeez, Ben, you're distracted too easily.
Not true, I told him as I turned around and followed him and the rest of the group down a hallway.
Very true. If you weren't, you would have seen me take your phone.
he said, holding up my smartphone. I frowned, snatched the device from his hands as he snickered.
Ah, Ben. Blinded by the ways of love.
It's not love, Josh. I just think she's kinda cute and funny and... Okay, shut up! I told him. He turned around and began walking backwards as he spoke to me.
Look, as much as I love to help you out, I suggest you take those thoughts and chuck them out the window.
Why? I asked, a bit confused.
Because, man, getting yourself tied down to one girl is not the way to go. Especially with your kind of schedule. Once you're in a relationship, you're gonna have to sacrifice everything for her. If you really want that game out by next year, stay single.
Josh, just because I'm interested in a girl doesn't mean I'm gonna stop working on my project, I told him. He sighed.
Just saying, she'll act all lovey-dovey in the beginning. But soon enough, you'll be stuck as her human coat rack in the women's clothes section, rather than sitting at home munching on chips and designing sprites.
I wouldn't mind that, but only if we're in the lingerie section, I said, smirking at him.
Seriously, Ben. With your schedule, I suggest staying away from relationships right now.
I watched his eyes for a few seconds before smirking, crossing my arms. Says the one staring at Amanda's ass? His face turned a deep red and he smacked my arm.
Technically, I'm not in a relationship.
Yeah, but you wanna be. You just wanna be in one before me, I told him. He sighed.
Yeah, a little. Come on, let's hurry so we don't get left behind.
The two of us continued down the hallway, reuniting with our group who was standing in front of a glass window, watching some sort of experiment.
This is a proton negatizer, a device that can temporarily cancel gravity in the space that it's used in.
The woman told the class.
It was recently developed and at the moment is being produced for the United States military.
Dude, that looks like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Chandler exclaimed.
The future is now.
Josh muttered in awe. I had to admit, even I was impressed. Most science labs were probably experimenting with mice in mazes or trying to grow plants. However, Elysia's experiments were out of this world. Literally. Gravity guns? What's next? Hover boots?
Now, follow me down here, where you can see James's latest advancement towards the development of genetically engineered catgirls.
The tour guide said with a smile as she led the class down the hall. Josh pumped his fist in the air and whispered excitedly.
Yes!
I chuckled, shaking my head as we walked down the hallway. However, while the rest of the class turned around a corner, I didn't. I stopped and glanced down the hall, watching as James walked into a room, directing two men who were pushing a cart full of a glowing green material. Uncle James! I called out. However, he was unable to hear me before the door closed. I frowned. Turning around and looking back down the hallway, the class had gone down. By the time I'd called out to him, the class had already moved on and were nowhere in sight. I crossed my arms and walked down the hall. Just my luck. Lost already. There were several different hallways, all splitting into different pathways, but nothing indicated where my group had gone. I groaned, passing through a small metal door into another room where I heard someone speaking. Guys? It was a large experimentation room, barren of anything except for a lab table in the middle of a room. On the table were several tools, including a laser device of some sort, paper towels, a clasp, and a container containing vials of that green material from before. Beside the vials was a glass box. Within it, a triangular green gemstone, but no sign of my group.
And over here.
Catching the muffled voice of the tour guide, I turned around and approached the door on the other end of the room. My group was being led down the hallway on the other side, and I could see Josh looking around for me. I yanked on the knob to try and open the door to get to them, but it was locked. I cursed under my breath and turned around, hoping that through the other door there was a hall that led back towards them. But as I passed by the lab table, my shirt was caught on the container holding the vials, knocking both me and the glass containers to the floor. I groaned, crawling away as I examined the shattered glass on the floor. The glowing green material was spilled out onto the floor, flashing every few seconds as I stared at it. Was it radioactive? Had I ruined an experiment? Damn it! I shouted out loud as I pulled up my sweatpants, feeling something wet running down my leg. A small shard of glass had left a cut on my ankle, which was now visibly bleeding. I kept my eyes on the wound as I reached up, blindly moving my hand along the table as I reached for the paper towel. But instead of finding it, my hand found instead the glass box containing the bright green gem. I pulled it onto the floor and the box shattered, the gemstone clattering across the floor. I picked it up, holding it in my hand and brushing the dust off the small stone. I could tell it was precious, judging by its size and shine. What I did not know was its capabilities. Slowly, the gem began to glow, the bright shine beginning to fill the entire room. The glowing green tubes on the wall began to shake, and the large laser device on the ceiling began to power on. Oh shit! It seemed like only a second had gone by, but in reality, it had been hours. I opened my eyes, being greeted by a bright white light, and a loud ringing began to fill my ears. Everything around me was a blur.
Ben!
I groaned in confusion as my eyes slowly began to focus. I held my arm over my face to block out the light, which was moved away seconds later.
Benjamin!
My entire body was numb, but it was slowly going away. I began wiggling my fingers, trying to turn over as I felt an intense feeling begin to pound within my chest.
Benjamin!
I sat up as a man approached me, handing me a small cup of water, my hand still shaking. I took the water and began sipping it down, my eyes eventually returning to normal and giving me the chance to realize what was going on. "Uncle James?" I asked as I looked up at him. His worried expression changed to a relieved smile as he wrapped his arms around me, muttering the same sentence over and over.
Oh, thank God, thank God, thank God, thank God, thank God, thank God.
"What happened?" I asked, rubbing the side of my head as I tried to recollect my thoughts. The last few minutes before I passed out were nothing but a blur, random memories scattered around and misaligned, kind of like my desktop.
You wandered into the experimental room and set off the gyronizer. That thing is only meant to be used on specific test subjects. It surprises me that you survived little to no damage. Of course, it helped there were no other contaminants in the room to combine with. Thank God those vials were empty.
He said in relief. I gulped. Empty?
Oh, when we found you, there were several smashed vials on the floor. You must have knocked them over by accident. However, it seems that they were emptied beforehand. Had they not been, you could have been in quite a predicament. Whew.
James, they weren't? As I reached my hand out, James' glowing green watch suddenly broke apart, hundreds of small glowing particles floating within my grasp. We both stared at my hand with our mouths dropped, astonished as the glowing green particles began to zip back and forth.
Ben?